Hi, this is Ty Bradshaw. I'm the production supervisor here at Eleet Cryogenics. Wanted to take you through a basic instructional video on how to take apart a Cash Acme Type A32 quarter-inch regulator from the stock range of 300 to 600 psi, and we're going to convert this 300 to 600 psi regulator into a regulator that's capable of 100 to 250 pounds versus the 3 to 6. So first, I'm assuming on a microbolt can that the A32 regulator is installed like this with the dome down. When you go to remove the regulator from service, or you can leave the regulator installed and just pull the cap off the regulator to make the changes we need to make. If you do that, I would suggest you take one wrench and hold the pipeline of the regulator in one position for counter torque, and put another larger wrench on the flats of the spring chamber, and then you loosen the spring chamber. Before pulling the spring chamber all the way off, I would suggest loosening the set screw. If you loosen this, if you do not loosen the set screw, when you go to pull the spring chamber, the spring will literally push the chamber apart and you might lose the innards of the regulator. So once you undo the regulator, you'll have this. You might not be able to see the actual seat of the regulator because you might be upside down in the pipeline. You take this apart, you'll see a blue gasket. I would suggest using gloves just because this is presumably an oxygen clean regulator. You can remove the gasket. Next you'll have the diaphragm itself. There'll be multiple layers of a copper diaphragm. You'll see on top of the diaphragm, you'll have a pressure plate. So the pieces of the regulator we will have to change will be that pressure plate. This is what's called a diaphragm plate. We will have to replace that as well. And then your spring. And further inside the regulator, if you drop this out, you'll have a spring button. This is basically just sits on top of the spring, and as you adjust the adjusting bolt in or the adjusting screw to raise or lower pressure set point of the regulator, you'll put pressure on the spring. So we will not be touching the spring button. We can put that right back in the regulator. So we'll be removing the spring, the pressure plate or the diaphragm plate. See this. So you just take two wrenches, one on the side of the pressure plate and one on the flow side of the diaphragm. It usually is pretty easy to loosen. Then you can take it off the rest of the way by hand. Be careful. Underneath this, underneath the nut is a lock washer. So now you can take off the pressure plate, put it aside, and I'll take our new pressure plate, which is a Cash Acme part 15958, and install it on top of the diaphragm. I'll get the wrenches and just snug it up. So now you have your diaphragm assembly. This is what Cash Acme would call it. It would be your diaphragm plates and your pressure plate. We will also need to replace the diaphragm stop. So we're pulling out this thicker diaphragm stop that's designed for the 300 to 600 and putting in a thinner piece. You can see that they're quite a bit different. The one that we pulled out of the 300 600 regulator is quite a bit heavier because of the pressure settings. So we're going to put in The catch acme part number is 06416. Again, between the diaphragm plate, the pressure plate, and the new spring, you'll be able to operate the regulator at 100 to 250 pounds. So we'll take our new spring, which is a 10661 spring, suitable for 100 to 250 pounds. You'll see inside the pressure cap, you'll see the spring button down at the bottom. Place the spring inside the cap. It doesn't really matter which way the spring faces. And then when you put in the diaphragm assembly, make sure that that nut is on top. And that will go inside. That'll fit inside the spring. Before you put that in, make sure you put in your diaphragm stop. So you'll see the diaphragm stop in the spring. Then you go to put in your pressure plate assembly or diaphragm assembly. Try and center it to make sure that that nut is inside the spring itself. Then all you need to do to reassemble the regulator, this is a pretty well used gasket, as you can tell. If you take a brand new regulator out of the box or off of a microbolt can, it should be in good enough shape you can reuse it without any problems. And then all you do is, I guess while you have the regulator open, make sure that it's clean on the inside, that there's no debris. And then all you do is thread back on the regulator, assuming again that you'll probably have it installed like this, and you can just make sure your adjustment knob is out, make it easier to thread this back in. Make sure you use counter torque on your wrench, or make sure you have a wrench available for counter torque. Tighten the regulator back into place, and then you can typically just thread in your adjusting knob back to where the lock nut is, and then you are set to operate, and your new range for this regulator will now be 100 to 250 pounds.